Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vanity, so back on Card Fight Vanguard, Ezel and the Vanity weekly video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, and watch, shall we? So this time we're covering a lot of reveals from the Bushy Road strategy meeting from this last week, which sadly had to do it on Wednesday, so I couldn't get the reveals out until literally the following week. But then we also have some more reveals from the anime, mainly dealing with Drajeweled, and then we have a little bit more reveals from set 10, which kind of reveal a little bit more about the content. So let's go and get this started, shall we? First up, we have Eagle-Eyed Magic Swordsman Zareos, grade 2 FIK shield, 10k base, continues rear guard. If this unit is on a rear guard circle, drag tree marker on it, this unit gets plus 5k power and auto and intercepts, it gets plus 5k shield on the battle. All around pretty solid because that means guaranteedly during both player turns it's a 15k base, then during your turns a 20k base next to Draco tree markers, and then when she intercepts she's a 10k shield. All around pretty solid, adds aggressive and defensive power to Draco tree markers, and actually is a card I'm gonna go shove into my Gâteau deck after this because I completely forgot to do that when I was in tabletop last night. So all around, Zareos is just a all around solid grade 2 for defensive and aggressive capabilities. So yeah, nice solid 3 for any Gâteau deck really, or any Draco tree deck might be. Then we have Brawlfiend Hydra, grade 2 5k shield, 10k base. Auto was placed on rear guard from your hand. If you have 3 or more rear guard circles, Draco tree markers on them, counter boss 1, choose a grade 3 lower card from your soul, call it to rear guard. All around, I love this card because this is what I was wanting from all the cards that had like the Draco tree skills, like when placed, counterblast, soul blast, do a thing specific to the deck's like what the deck nation is, and they were all just like draw card. I'm glad that this one is different in the sense that it actually does what the deck wants to do by having 3 or more Draco tree markers. Granted, you still get to call a grade 3 or lower. All around, it's a solid grade 2. I like it a lot. I think it's great. I also love its art. It just looks cool to me. So solid 3 of in a Draco tree deck. I have to change my Gâteau Dark States deck a lot apparently because a lot of the good cards are in that one. And then we have some stuff from the strategy meeting, and we have the big boy in the sense of the DBT11 preview, which outside of revealing Ezel for it, which I am hyped for, we have Avarice Demonic Dragon King, Gridon Masques. I've heard some talk that people think this thing's going to be an 8 damage boy. I don't know if they're joking, being serious, or a combination of the two, but I feel like 8 damage is a step too far, unless its skill is like, I don't know, Soul Blast out a Gridon, and for the turn he gets, or until the end of your opponent's next turn you die at 8. I don't know what the strategy would be on that one, but I guess it's fair, so, cool, solid grade 3. I don't know what this skill is going to be. That's just the assumption I have, but based on what I've heard people think it's going to do. But yeah, there's our notification that we are getting a Gridon Mask if there's any doubt we weren't. Then we have some news on Favrenio, Graham Grace, and Orphist, where they're finally making decks for these boys. So they're more or less full decks. They're coming out October 6th on 2023. I don't know if they're going to be in English. I hope they're in English, considering, you know, they have text in English over here. If they're not in English, I'm going to be really upset, because this is 2 days before my birthday, so I'm really hoping it's in English. So, yeah, Graham, Grace, Favrenio, and Orphist. Cool. We can finally get these for real. And here are the deck lists we have for them. So these 3 cards are the ride line cards for Orphist. This card is a new card for both Orphist and Favrenio and Graham Grace all at once. And then these last cards are reprints for Graham Grace. And as you can see, Graham Grace does have a ride line up here, which we will get to later. And this is also Favrenio's ride line. And they more or less will have the same skill as these 3 over here from Graham Grace. So take a look at these lists. If you want to pause the video to look at them, go ahead. I'm sorry the Orphist one is really small here. I'll blow it up for you just a little bit so you guys can see a little bit more. And I'm sorry for those of you that are looking at the Graham Grace build. You can go pause and rewind the video, but there's the Orphist build. And then we move on to our next cards. Like I said, we will get to what the ride line is later. We have Rainfall Magic Utatar, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto is placed on guard circle. If you have a Vanguard Sorceress in its card name, look at the top card of your deck and put it to top or bottom. This is straight up an Angel Feather card. You know that Angel Feather G guard that was like, you know, you place it on guard circle and then like you counter boss 1, look at the top card, put it top or bottom, then heal 1, take a damage. This is literally that card just minus the counter boss 1 and rescue check. Like it's a free deck stack of a trigger, which is pretty solid, and I gotta say, I am kind of tempted to run this in my Sorceress deck, except I do like running Diaglass for making a board, and all of my grade 1s I actually like, and I don't want to scrap any of my grade 2s. So sadly, as much as I want to run this, I have no equivalent reason to, but it is a solid grade 1, and if I do choose to run it, I'm definitely running it as a solid 3 of. Then we have Coloring One's Wish Vashblan, grade 2 5k shield, 10k base. Autos discard from your hand during your turn for ride phase. Soul Boss 1, put it to bottom to draw a card. So it's the Persona Ride thing for Lyrical Monasterio. And then Auto is placed on rear guard. If you Persona Rode this turn, Counter Boss 1, choose one of your Vanguards until end of turn it gets continuous Vanguard. All your opponents get plus 5k for the turn. So all around, pretty solid. you can just get a free +5 to your entire front row, which means for multi-attack, you can abuse the hell out of that. Hazeret's going to have fun with that. What are the other? Kyrie. Oh, ho, ho. Actually, no, Kyrie, Persona Red Kyrie would be able to have fun with this. This is going to cause a lot of problems, and I can't wait to see what happens with it, and it's going to be a very interesting grade 2 to look forward to. So, maybe I think this is like a solid 2 over 3 of in any real, Persona. By the way, her ability stacks, for the record, because you give the Vanguard a continuous ability. So, you can just call multiple of them, to my understanding, give all their CB to basically away, and then just get that skill off. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can stack that ability if you just call a bunch of them. So 4 of this, and I feel like Kyrie's gonna break the hell. Does this Kyrie have a way to bounce during the main phase? I hope Kyrie doesn't have a way to bounce during the main phase. I hope any deck doesn't have the way to bounce during the main phase. Otherwise, this thing will legit break that deck. So yeah, 4 of over there for any real Persona Red spamming decks. Then we have a new card, Felty Rosa, which is pretty great because I love Felty Rosa. If it's not known, Felty Rosa is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Lyric Come on a Stereo deck. So great 3-turn Persona, 13k base, Snuggle up to the Moonlight Adelheit. So great, continues rear guard guard circle. If your opponent's drive check or damage check has revealed a trigger unit during this turn, she can put 5k power or plus 10k shield and 10k power. So she essentially just nullifies a trigger, which is great. The thing about her skill I find interesting is that her skill requires the opponent to see triggers. Almost like this isn't meant to be Felty Rosa support as much as supposed to be a premonition to a new ghost line we might get in the future that happens to evolve trigger sacking because of how her skill works. But then her other skill is auto rear guard. At the end of the battle in which she was boosted by Soul Blasting 1, perform one of the following. Either choose one of your other rear guards in the same column as her and bounce it to hand, or remove from play an over trigger from your drop zone. Choose up to 1 unit card from your hand with grade equal to or less than your Vanguard and call it to rear guard. Okay, first up, that is very they imply that ability is going to be broken because that's a once per game ability because you have to remove the over trigger from play. But then my other thing is when I first read this is that is the most random skill I've ever seen because I never expected them to put an over trigger based skill on a triple rare that had nothing to do with Masques or Griffogila. It just felt so weird looking at it. I remember when I first looked at it, I was like, okay, I couldn't read what it was in Japanese, but I was like, it seems fine. And then I immediately saw this, and I was like, what does this actual skill do? So, I don't get why that's there, but sure. Let's just put a random over trigger restriction on the card. 3 of 4 of, I guess, in Felty Rosa. It doesn't bounce itself, though, so you can't really, use its ability to open up from rear guard circles, but it is a 10k shield, 23k swinger, so there's that. Then we have Special Moment with you, Strass, grade 2 NSF 5k shield, 10k base, continues rear guard. If the total number of your rear guards friend or powerful ability is 3 or more, she gets boost. Okay, so thankfully none of those decks require everything in them to have booster or friend, powerful or friend, so being a 10k booster is pretty solid. And then auto, when this unit is placed during your main phase from anywhere, choose one card from your soul and put it into your drop zone. So you have to send something from soul to drop, which is kind of great. If you're playing powerful, you might not have soul to begin with, so essentially you have a vanilla. In the sense of friends, it's kind of like 50-50. And then if you have a Vanguard friend or powerful, you may choose a card with friend or powerful ability from your drop zone and call it to rear guard. And then if you call it a card, you cannot call cards from your drop zone for the rest of the turn. Removing card from the soul is mandatory for the ability, by the way. So, being able to, just get a free card from drop or Soul Blast and then call that card from soul is just solid. I think it works better for friends because friends, or at least the way I play it, don't really require soul outside of the card that calls itself at the start of the ride deck. But outside of that, I don't really use soul, so I feel like this would be best for friends. And then powerful, while yes, it's really good for powerful, you might not have the soul to actually proc it off, therefore you're just getting a booster, which isn't bad, but still. So all around, it's a solid grade 2. I'm probably not going to run it, and I now realize it's a promo, so there's that, but 4 of, 3 of, I guess, in a Friends and Powerful deck. In my personal opinion, you want to go farther than a 3 of in this deck. Then we have our ride line for Graham Grace, and I am so upset they had the audacity to give us this, because I asked for this a while ago, actually. Maybe not, I think maybe these exact skills, but more or less on the line of a generic ride line that they can put in set 5 or set 6 or set 7 for any deck, but is not given to a specific ride line. And then they immediately do this 5 sets later, but then they give it to a specific ride line. Come on. And it doesn't even match the aesthetic. You gotta do this to me, really? So, starting Magic Starry, grade 0 boost 5k shield 6k base, auto roll upon for 1 second draw a card. Standard starter, not supposed about it. But I want to say this. It reminds me of my Pet Through deck from Genesis, and that's one of my favorite decks, so I will probably be running the starter, and I just think she's really cool. So, there's that. But then we have Incision Angel, the first disappointment of the two. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base. Auto is rolled upon and draw a card, choose a card from your hand, discard it. Okay, again I say, I wanted a generic ride line. I'm being honest about that. I never said I wanted it for Graham Grace. I wanted this in general for other decks to have for the sake of budget. But no, they chose not to do that and instead just gave it to Graham Grace because they didn't feel like giving Graham Grace something unique. Which I can understand, like, because Graham Grace is, in my mind, Graham Grace is kind of weird in the sense that it's going to be a little bit, not super difficult, but it's going to have like a weird ride line. But then they said that Favrenio is going to have almost the exact same skills. So there's that. Just no. And then the grade 2, Divine Sister Gâteau Basque. Grade 2 NSF 5k shield, 10k base. Continues Vanguard. When you would ride from your ride deck, you may Soul Blast one instead of discard a card from your hand. Okay, this is fine for a lot of other decks. My issue is, again, you really had to slap this on to Graham Grace. Which, by the way, I see more Soul Blast problems in Graham Grace than I see in CB problems, which is what someone argued in Graham Grace, that Graham Grace sees more CB problems than Soul Blast problems, which is why this is better than Blast for Dark. My argument is I've literally, like, rarely see a CB problem, and I see a CB problem in the late game more than I see it in the early game. So, and I run definitely more into Soul problems in the early game, to the point where this kind of feels like, kind of screwing myself, but I'm so disappointed. I got what I wanted in the sense of a generic ride line, but I got it in like the worst way possible. I don't know what to say. And they didn't even give him rear guard skills. Like, come on, if you're gonna do this, at least give him rear guard skills. One of each of these in the deck of Graham Grace, I guess, because that's what it is, by the way, if you can't tell. I forgot I have to minus this to show you again, but yeah, no, there's confirmation. They are in the ride deck for whatever reason. Apparently, Favrenio is either going to have the exact same skills or similar skills, which I'm upset about a lot. Then we have Friendship Knight Lordric, grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base, auto rear guard once per turn. When your other grade 1 or less rear guards are retired by your card's ability, Soul Blast 2 to draw a card and gets plus 5k to end of turn. Okay, so 13k base, you get a draw. It's fair enough. You know, there's not much else I can say about it. I can't think of a card. Oh yeah, Roro can do that, but I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't use this in Roro because that's way too hefty of a cost. And then the other decks that might be able to use this, I honestly don't remember the other decks that could use this. But if there are ones, which there probably is, I probably still want to use it because Soul. So 3 of, I guess, if you choose to run it, if you find Soul for it. But I know I won't. Then we have Sylvan Horn Beast Cormus, aka the thing that is forcing me to acknowledge the fact we are going to get a Magnolia Masques at some point, considering there are now 3 or 2 support cards that imply that Magnolia is going to get a Masques. So grade 2 instead 5k shield, 10k base, continues rear guard. If this unit is on the rear guard circle with a Dragon Tree marker on it, it gets, when this unit intercepts, gets a 5k shield ton about, and it gets an additional 5k power. So it's literally the exact same skill as this one, but in different wording. Interesting. Actually, no, it's the same wording. Just the way it was set through Discord is weird because we can like tell by the Japanese text, like the red text, is the exact same order. I don't know why the Discord was just weird then, but yeah. So 15k base during your opponent's turn with 10k shield, or 10k shield with a 20k base during your turn. All around solid card. I like it a lot, and yeah, this is the new hope of Magnolia Masques being a thing because most likely or not, we're getting one now. Then we have this thing. I used to hate its art. I love its art now, but I now hate the card. Karmic Demonic Dual Dragon Drajeweled Masques. Grade 3, Turn Drive Persona Ride, 13k base, continuous. You can be written from a grade 3 with Drajewel's card name. Active Vanguard by once per turn by moving a card with Drajewel's different card name from your hand, soul, or drop zone. This is the deck I've pulled this off the most consistently with every game. Choose 2 cards from your drop zone, put them into your soul, and it gets a critical for the turn. Okay. Solid. When I put a Discord prediction on this, I said it was going to have the ability to, the crit was going to move over to the other skill, which I was right, and then I said it would have the ability to guard restrict with that skill. I was half right and half wrong if we look at it a certain way. But being able to get a 2 free soul is pretty nice because what you can do is you can soul blast out a grade 3 Drajeweled the previous turn, and then the next turn you can send that grade 3 into, you can remove that grade 3 from game and then put more stuff into soul, so therefore you're like recycling and you're not really losing a soul blast out of it, and you get a crit, which is pretty solid. And then Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, the part about most people hate, and not the part I hate, but just the deck in general I hate. Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 4 with different grades. Choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards, kill them. Choose 1 of your opponent's Vanguards, increase or decrease the power to 1 ton a turn. So, remember when I said about guard restrict? Okay, technically it doesn't guard restrict, and by guard restrict I meant like they have to guard with 2 or more at the same time. But at the same time, it kind of does, because the situation is now, if your opponent sees this coming, they're going to have to use up their interceptors earlier to make sure that they can keep their extra shield in hand, and then you can just use the skill just to kill 2 more back row units, so therefore you are technically killing 4 cards at once, technically causing a 2-card guard restrict, which is interesting to say the least. It's like, it's guard restrict in theory, more or less, but a lot of people hate it for the CB skill, because the deck adds a little bit more CB to the cost. My thing is, it doesn't, because, like... It's like the same thing that I played with the other one, where I would constantly use the CB1 to soul charge 2 and draw a card. So therefore, I'm just swapping out one CB for another. So it's not changing how I do it. When it added into the it did add a CB problem, but that was Skull Kemda that did that, not this. The thing I hate about this is this deck hates me until I swapped out a heal, and just watch yesterday's video on the commentary, and you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about, because I don't feel like going through the story for like the 10th time in the last 2 days. 4 of Drajeweled Masques. It's a solid grade 3. I just hate the deck. I just hate that deck. It knows what it did to me. Then we have True Kenneth Breath Dragon, grade 2 instead of 5k shield, 10k base. Auto is placed on rear card, look at the top card of your deck, put it to top or bottom, and if you put it to bottom, look at the top card of your deck. Okay, this is just a freebie card for Solarian. You can just check the top card, and pretty much that's it. I feel like this was unnecessary, because like Solarian has many ways to, deck stack, but I guess now it kind of makes sense in the sense of all those cards were like double rare or higher, so for the sake of budget, you can now play these instead of them, which is fair. It just feels like its way of deck stacking was completely unnecessary, but sure. I do like how the fact that it can just swap a card. And then we have Orderly Scholar Olderio. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto rear guard. When your other grade 1 or less unit is placed from your deck, you can put that unit into your soul. If you put a card, this unit gets plus 5k for the turn. Okay, the other person I saw do something on this, I don't want to call them out, because I feel like if I say their name, it feels like I'm like kind of bringing out a negative connotation in it. I don't want to like make it sound negative. It's just that's the way it's going to sound if I do this. I'm not going to say who they are, but so this wasn't as good for Solarian, which makes sense, because Solarian doesn't really call a lot of stuff from deck. However, this isn't for Solarian. We know it's not. Because what's coming out next set? Ezel's. What is Ezel from? Golds. What is Golds known to do best? Spam shit from deck. What is the skill is about spamming stuff from deck? And it isn't a once per turn. I know they're not going to make Golds nearly this broken out like in the first set they come out in. But if they give Golds enough superior call power to do their, like, more or less standard plays, like, not super BS plays, but, like, standard plays, yeah, this thing's gonna be a beat stick beyond beat sticks, and it's gonna get a lot of souls. Basically gonna be our version of Brainwash Swirl. There's gonna be a little bit more work put into it. Either way, Olderio is a solid grade 1, and in Solarian, maybe not even warning of a 2 of tech, but in the Golds, depending on what happens, he might warrant a 4 of, so yeah, take that as you will. Next up, we have Octaward Ravager, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 15k base. Continues, you cannot ride this card, and continues rear guard. If you did not soul blast 3 or more at the same time for cost of your card's ability, this turn cannot attack or boost. Okay, it's not a horrible card. I gotta say, its art is interesting. And being a 15k base is nice and all, but having to drop 3 or more, basically use any of your Vanguard's abilities from Drajeweled, Bruce, Unica, etc., it's kind of naff in my opinion. It's still a decent card, but I feel like it would be warrant more than a 2 of tech, because in a situation where you don't use the skill for whatever reason it may be, it's basically a dead card, so 2 of ish. Then we have Steam Launcher Yasmaf, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, on rear guard. When your Karmic Demonic Jewel Dragon Drajeweled Masque is placed on Vanguard, put this unit to your soul to draw a card. Okay, it's not horrible because it helps you get an extra grade 1 to soul and to get you a free draw. The downside is it requires you to specifically ride Drajeweled Masque. And as much as I love this card being unique to a specific deck, I just think it's kind of meh, especially because for me personally, it's not a problem of getting grade 1s into soul, it's a problem of getting every other grade into soul, and even now it's not really a problem of getting anything into soul, it's just mainly triggers, which is kind of easy to solve thanks to the critical. And the draw skill is solid, but I feel like for me personally, this probably isn't needed, but it's a nice support card to rely on if I have to for Drajeweled, so possible 2 of tech for me in this one. Okay, let's go over the last few reviews for the day. First up, we have Incision Angel, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto rear guard when this unit boosts to rear guard. If you have a grade 3 greater standing Vanguard, Carabas 1, look at the top 2, choose 1 card from among them, or choose 2 cards from among them, put them back at top, and put the rest on bottom in any order. Okay, it's not bad being a CB1 to basically stack the top 2, but it still feels kind of iffy because it has to boost a rear guard and your Vanguard has to be standing, so it kind of works out though with the new hex in the sense that it can stand itself from the Vanguard will stand it from the skill of Aquamarine, but
It's 50-50 in my mind, so you can run as a 2, but in my opinion, I wouldn't run this just because it just wouldn't work for me. But it's still a solid grade 1 though. Then we have this new Drajeweled card that works out great with the CB, and that is Cranium Burner. Great 2 does 5k shield, 10k base, on a rearguard when he attacks. If you have a Drajeweled Vanguard, he gets plus 2k on a battle, and at the end of the battle, if you soul blasted 4 more cards at the same time for the cost of your Vanguard's ability this turn by retiring himself, you can counter 1. Okay. Pretty solid, cuts down on the CB from Drajeweled, and while normally I would go with the theme of all the dragons specifically, to be fair, he does name restrict himself to Drajeweled, so I feel like I would actually run him in my Drajeweled deck. So being able to countercharge and deal with the CB problem a lot is definitely helpful, and I think this grade 2 is actually solid, so I'm going to give him a 4 of a Drajeweled deck, because CB definitely jumps into priority with this deck now. Then we have Casualty Dragon, Crucial Dragon, grade 3 trigger persona, 13k base, continues to rearguard a guard circle. If your opponent's drive check reveals a trigger, he gets plus 10,000 power and 10k shield. Okay, and then auto rearguard once per turn when he attacks a Vanguard while not boosted. Put another rearguard in the same column as it to soul and perform all the following. Either choose opponent's rearguard and kill it and it gets plus 5k for the turn, or move it over trigger from the drop zone. Your opponent cannot call grade 1 greater from hand to guard circle till the battle. Okay, why are we getting cards that just drop your opponent's guard part? Apparently this is the Favreau card. I know you guys can't see it because of how this is angled, but apparently this thing is in DSSO5. Actually, wait, no, that's probably not, I mean, it might work as a Favreau card, but I think that might be the Festival Collection. Either way, why are we getting a bunch of cards that just rely on over triggers being dropped? What the hell? But either way, being able to kill an opponent's rear and get plus 5 is pretty nice, or being able to guard restrict your opponent for 1 battle is pretty nice as well. So I think this can be a solid card, especially for Favreau in general, and just a lot of decentness for all the other Dark States decks. So solid 3 over 4 of the Dark States decks. And then the last reveal for today is this. One of my Discord friends got this right, where they said Vermilion was coming in set 11 because Ezel was revealed. And yep, you can't have Vermilion without Ezel, and you can't have Ezel without Vermilion, like you can't have Orla without PBD. So fair enough, we have the Dragon Boys coming back, and I see a moon in the background. So actually, that's not a moon, that's a thunder thing, but still looks like a moon in the background. So yeah, cool. The whole run looks pretty solid. And either I'm going to end here. Hope you guys enjoyed. We got a lot of good reviews today, and hopefully next week we get a few more good reviews. So I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow the channel. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to snap your Vanguards.